The humble hatchback, well, it's not all that popular anymore. In the monthly list of bestsellers, it's constantly dominated by high-riding models and compact SUVs. Cars like this, the Audi Q3. Now, it aims to offer the same kind of practicality you'd get from a car like, well, the A3, but with a higher riding position that gives you more confidence when you're behind the wheel. But what else has it got to offer? That's what we're going to find out today. This latest generation of Audi Q3 is by far the most premium looking to date. This one in particular is the Sportback model, which means it's got a sloping roofline and follows in suit of other Sportback models across the Audi range. The Q3 is able to benefit from some of Audi's latest technology, so it's got a full screen up here, a digital dash ahead of you, and what I really like is loads of physical controls for the heating, ventilation, and also the volume, which I think is really important in a car because it means you can get the sound just as you want it without fiddling about with the screen. Elsewhere, the fixture and fittings are nicely put together, everything feels robust and solid underneath. There's some good spacious storage bits on the side for your water bottles. The only thing I'm not too sure about in this car is the grey leather, which I feel is just a little bit 90s, but that's completely down to taste and you could change that to a different colour should you want to. Overall, you get that nice high seating position which people are after in this market, but it's backed up by a very nice fit and finish level, which makes this car feel particularly premium. There's what I would call a reasonable amount of space in the back of the Q3. The seat is in my position, and I've got a decent amount of knee room, but I've actually got loads of room for my feet, which is quite impressive. And against something like a regular A3 or a Golf, I'd say it's probably on par. But what you do get in this car is a slightly raised seating position, so you get a nicer view out of the area ahead. We've got ISOFIX points on the two outer seats, and interestingly this car's seats are also on rails, so you can slide them forward and back, and that's good because if you do have a child seat in there, you might want to move the seat slightly more forward so you get a larger boot, which is quite a clever feature. Overall, it's a nicely well-made area, but this Sportback line does eat into headroom, so if you've got taller passengers or taller kids in the back here, you might want to bear that in mind and maybe opt for the regular Q3. In terms of boot space, the Q3 does really well. There's 530 litres available there, and that's more than you'll get in the car that rivals the Q3, like the Volvo XC40, and it's more than the 380 litres that you'll get from the Volkswagen Golf too, so against a traditional hatchback, it's definitely up there. You've got some nice deep pockets either side for those loose objects, and as I mentioned before, you can slide those middle seats forward and back so you can extend the load area further. As with most cars, you can also lay those seats flat, which gives you an even larger load area. I think it's quite an impressive space, although it is quite high thanks to this load lip here. Though there are a number of engine options available with the Q3, I feel like the one in this car, which is a 1.5 litre turbocharged petrol, offers a really nice blend of performance and efficiency. Now, with 148 brake horsepower, it's got more than a shove for overtaking or getting up to speed nice and quickly on the dual carriageway or motorway, but it should also achieve around about 43 mpg combined. Now, remember, you'll get the best efficiency figures from lower specification cars because they come on smaller wheels. So a Sport, for instance, will be able to return about 43 mpg, whereas an S-Line or a Black Edition, that's going to be more about 40. So it's not a huge difference, but it's one worth bearing in mind. But what's it like to drive in general? Well, it's nice and easy. We've got a 7-speed automatic gearbox in this car, and though it does suffer from something that troubles quite a lot of Audis, which is a little bit of delay between the application of the throttle and the delivery of power, and you notice it most of all when you are trying to get onto a roundabout or exiting a junction. For the most part, it's nice and smooth and it shifts really well. You can't take control of it manually via paddles because there aren't any paddles, but actually that's quite refreshing because this isn't the sort of car that needs gear change paddles, and I think that's just fine without it. You can do it down on the gear stick, but for the most part I just leave it to its own devices. Visibility in this Sportback version is restricted compared to the conventional Q3 SUV as well. Over the shoulder there's quite a lot of pillar blocking your view, and the rear screen is quite small as well. So actually there's not too much benefit to opting for the Sportback in my view. It's more of a styling trait thing, and all it does is restrict headroom in the back and restrict visibility, so you might just be better off going for the regular Q3. The steering is nice and light, but it's quite accurate, and this just blends a nice area between an SUV and a smaller car. You don't feel too large on the road, you don't find that it's too difficult to drive down tighter lanes, but also it gives you that nice, large, solid feel that you want from an SUV. And you've got a higher driving position, so if you've never driven a larger car before, then it's going to inspire a bit more confidence, because just sitting higher up gives you a better view and it gives you better visibility overall. One thing I have noticed is that when you're travelling at motorway speeds or just at higher speeds in general, there is a greater amount of road and wind noise. So that's something worth bearing in mind if you're doing a lot of longer journeys, because it's going to make it just slightly more tiresome. It's not too bad, it's certainly not an overwhelming feature of the car, but it's just something you notice when you're driving at motorway speeds, like I mentioned. This car is also packed full of assistance systems, so something that I've noticed quite a lot is the lane keep assist, which will automatically try and guide you to keep you within the white lines of the road. It's really useful on the motorway, and when you're doing longer drives it can take a little bit of the backache out of driving. But what I've found is, as with all systems, when you're on country lanes it's really confused by narrower lanes, and that'll try and steer you back, perhaps not into an area where you want to be. You can disengage it of course, but each time you turn the car off and on again, it'll be on again when you switch the car on again. I'd say for quite a small capacity engine as well, and one with 148 brake horsepower, this car feels really strong, and it certainly doesn't feel like a small car to drive out on the road. I think if 148 brake horsepower is pretty much on the money for this type of vehicle. I don't think you'd want much more, because you'd start compromising on efficiency. So what you get here is a really good blend, as I've mentioned, between that shove that you want, and so that you don't feel powerless when you're out on the motorway, but also you're not going to be going crazy with your fuel spends too. The Q3 is quite a compelling reason to opt for a crossover. Though I personally do quite like hatchbacks and traditionally sized cars, this Audi is one that makes itself really known because of the fact that it delivers a very practical interior, a really well-sized boot, and that higher driving position that just inspires confidence in people throughout the UK. As much as it pains me to say, I can really see the plus points in this car, and thanks to its efficient petrol engine, it shouldn't cost too much to drive either. Overall, I think the Q3 is a really good example of just why buyers are shifting away from hatchbacks and estate cars into compact crossovers and smaller SUVs. And if you are looking for a car that has space for the family, a good amount of safety features and a very quiet, refined powertrain, then it's well worth checking out. Thank you for watching this motors.co.uk new car review on the Audi Q3. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, leave us a like below and let us know what you think of this car. Would you switch out of a regular hatchback and into a Q3? Let us know in the comment section below. And since you're here, please subscribe to the motors.co.uk YouTube channel and hit that bell icon so you're notified every time we upload a new review.